Gamers, what's happening? It's Deeds, and I am back, and we're doing a video about poison imbuement, the best modifiers to use with poison imbuement. Let's get into it. I want to finish this video before my edible kicks in.
Are you baked all the time?
Oh, not this big.
Okay, so I was on Reddit and just chit-chatting up. I came across a post about condemnation and poison imbuement and twisting blades not working properly, and I just went into whole paragraph kind of breaking down that multiplicative modifiers with core skills don't work with poison imbuement for whatever reason. I don't know why. Condemnation's still good. Early game, multiplicative versus additive modifiers, what glyphs to use, Paragon boards, yada yada yada. Thankfully, this gentleman named Pictor came strutting on in to Reddit, to r/D4 Rogue, right? This guy Pictor, awesome dude. Don't know where you've gotten your findings from. Here's the data I've gathered myself and cataloged. And he sent me a Google Doc link of a spreadsheet that he did with relatively, the best data I've seen so far on poison imbuement. Props to Pictor, right? This guy is a savior.
This is insane, you fool.
Like I was saying, this guy Pictor sent his Google Doc, all his data, all his findings, additive multipliers. I'm going to link this in the description so you can look over all the numbers. This son of a bitch literally recorded every single damage tick that he did. No joke, no lie. This guy is a fucking pioneer.
You're dead. You crazy son of a bitch, you're dead.
He's nuts. He did poison imbuement and he did shadow imbuement. Flat number aspects. Not important right now. No, that's important. And now we're going to get to the important stuff. I promise. Just some notes, conclusions that can be drawn from the data above for poison imbuement dot calculations. Core marksman cutthroat skills seem to be in a separate modifier of their own other than additive modifiers, right? So we have the damage buckets. So you have your multiplicative damage bucket, your additive damage bucket with literally almost every single affix. You know what I'm talking about when we're talking about damage buckets. If you want to link to damage bucket, right? Boom, 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 boom. I'll send you a link to damage bucket in the description. Damage over time % is behaving very weirdly. We'll have to redo damage over time test to try and get more solid data. Value of all damage is not affected by core, marksman, cutthroat, skill, multiplier. Value of all damage is affected by damage over time, close, poison %, all damage, imbuement skill %. This is relatively true. You would expect that to be true. Good thing it's true. And then we are dealing with at least 2 additive multipliers unknown where all damage fits into it. Dexterity is a separate multiplier, independent of other stats. Main stat, totally different. But this right here, the percentage, the damage affix. Yeah, you can get this on amulets. Apparently, it adds into your damage calculation twice. But it's still only additive. I wouldn't go around saying that % damage is it's the best because you get double the amount. Still additive, doesn't matter. There are better affixes you get on amulet. I wouldn't recommend this affix in particular. With all this out of the way, we're going to get to the most important part that I think you guys should see. I'm going to put a link in the description. You can save it for yourself. Now, this guy, he shared it on Reddit. I checked his profile. He made a whole profile post. He wants this to be in the public. Make sure you're giving your credit to Pictor, not me. I'm just the middleman. I found this. I wanted to share it. It's important. I have a channel to do so, so I'm going to do it. Confirmed interactions. This is the most important thing, the easiest thing for you to look at, to read, to understand. Most of the community is going to understand this. Not so much this. This is what we want to do. So he tested out all of his points of data. He included weapons like condemnation, boots like penitent greaves, glyphs, aspects, passives, legendary nodes, additive affixes, or actually these are not additive affixes, excuse me, additive stats, different kinds of affixes, physical damage, damage to frozen, Stuff that you may or may not think would work. Whew, this is a mouthful. So, in conclusion, condemnation does not work with poison imbuement. Penitent Greaves, global 10% multiplicative modifier, does add to poison imbuement damage ticks. Chip and Canny, global 1 to 10% multiplicative modifier to poison imbuement dot damage. It snapshots the stacks you have on the target when you apply poison imbuement. Efficacy, global 20% multiplicative modifier to poison imbuement dot damage. Massive. Glyph you should be using. Bane, 10%. Oh my god. 10% chance when you apply poisoning instead to apply double poisoning damage, effectively a 10% damage multiplier. Versatility. This is one that I believe no one has ever used this glyph. Versatility meta. Pop it in, poison imbuement. I know I'm going to be working with it. Global 15% multiplicative damage modifier to poison imbuement dot damage. Tracker duration. No damage loss per tick, just adds ticks. Means poison imbuement is calculated over 5 seconds, no matter if you have these talented. Tracker damage works, but not as expected. Expected the extra ticks of damage to carry over into the poisoning total. Turns out it does not. This makes tracker significantly worse for twisting blades. Your initial hit is going to have the damage increase. Additional ticks will not have that additional damage modifier. That's pretty much what that means. Exploit works, but not as expected. Turns out if you attack an enemy with an imbued ability, the imbuement gets the benefit from exploit vulnerable even if the core does not. Exploit's great. That's extra vulnerable damage directly to your poison imbuement. Don't worry about the core damage. In this case, the core may not apparently, but the poison damage totally does. Control works, but not as expected. It dynamically updates the damage over time from poison imbuement, meaning when a target is unstoppable, you get no benefit. And devious global 2 to 10% multiplicative modifier to poison imbuement dot damage. It snapshots the stacks you have on the target when you apply poison imbuement. Snapshot is really good. If you don't know what snapshot means, if you played D3, there was actually a few mechanics in D3 where you could snapshot your damage. It was one of the rings of convention of elements, I think it's called, where it cycles through all your elemental damage, and then when your element was coming up in the cycle, that's when you'd pop all your damage modifiers, so like your blinding flash, and then snapshots all of your highest damage modifiers together, right? And then the dot damage after that would then take that snapshot of damage into effect and be used. So anything with a snapshot, so like devious, chip, and canny, could very well be a lot better than using something else like tracker, for instance. And then he goes over some affixes right here. Expectant does not work. Expectant does not work with poison imbuement. Edge Masters does not work with poison imbuement. Aspect of Retribution, global multiplicative multiplier to poison imbuement dot damage, which means yes, does work. Intercom works with poison imbuement. Noxious Ice works, but not as expected. One of the few interactions that dynamically updates poison imbuement damage, tick damage, gets increased when it is up, and down to no increase when it's not up. Bursting Venom's one, bugged using 2 core skills with combo points apparently makes you proc Bursting Venoms even outside of regular windows. Oh, that's interesting. Even more infinite Bursting Venoms with double core skill. Don't tell Blizzard. Bursting Venom number 2, bugged. There seems to be a grace period when applying poisoning damage where all damage done is considered poison imbuement. Not limited to basic skills. That's pretty interesting too. Huh. I mean, Bursting Venoms pretty much makes the build. It's massive damage. Blade Dancers is bugged. Expected behavior is that the Blade Dancer hits are reduced, so Poison Imbuement dot will be small, but you get full return blade scaling on the Blade Dancers applying Poison Imbuement. That's pretty interesting. I think it'd be small. And you stab, and then they return. Oh, look at this. Weapon Mastery does not work. No damage gain for Poison Imbuement. Damage over time. Tests ran shows no increase in throughput with daggers and bows. Presumed same with swords. That might be an issue with damage to healthy. I'm not entirely sure. I think there's something about exploit in here. Yeah. Frigid. Global works with Frigid. Frozen works with Frozen. Impetus does not work with Impetus. Deadly Venom, that's directly to poison damage. Enhanced Poison Imbuement, no damage loss per tick, just adds ticks. Exploit, this is the exploit passive. Works but not as expected. It was expected to snapshot just like the DMG versus Healthy Affix does, but does not. But it does not. Dynamically updates the Poison Imbuement damage over time, which drastically reduces value. Right, exploit, because exploit is you deal extra damage to healthy or healthy and or injured enemies. You would think that it would snapshot the healthy damage, but as the damage, as the enemy's life decreases, the poison ticks would decrease, and then as you do more damage to injured enemies, they'd probably increase again at the end. Mixed Shadow Imbuement dynamically updates the Poison Imbuement damage over time. Damage goes up when mixed. Shadow Imbuement is up and down when it's not. Oh, is up when it is and down when it's not. Right. Subverting Poison Trap dynamically affects Poison Imbuement's damage. When Poisoning Trap is up, it increases the damage. Poison Imbuement, when it falls off, Subverting falls off, only works in physical trap on the ground. Right. So if they're out of the trap, does not work. In the trap, it works. Legendary nodes. Cheap Shot. Global 5 to 25. Multiplicative multiplier. 2 Poison Imbuement damage over time damage. So it works. Eldritch Bounty. It works and not as expected. First hit is also buffed, so it functionally works as 20% multiplicative modifier to Poison Imbuement damage over time damage. Exploit Weakness. Global 1 to 15% multiplicative modifier to Poison Imbuement dot damage. That's the vulnerable damage. And Tricks of the Trade does not work because, as we said, this is a multiplicative modifier to marksman and cutthroat skills. For some reason, don't know why, they don't work. Then he gets into additive stats. As we said before, cutthroat and marksman skills, as we said before, core, cutthroat, marksman skill damage are in a separate modifier or separate damage calculation that go into Poison Imbuement. So they're not strictly in the additive modifier. So this means when you're getting a dagger, you want dex, you want all stat, you want vulnerable, and you want core. Those are the best stats to get for sure on daggers. Additive stat 2, confirm stats and additive multiplier for Poison Imbuement skills. Imbuement skill percentage, damage 2, damage percent, damage after dodge, close damage, poison percentage, damage over time, damage percentage. They all work. All additive modifiers in this case work. Flat damage percentage works, but not as expected. Flat damage percentage, often called damage percentage, you find this in amulets, is added twice in the big multiplier of additive stats. I was saying that before. I think you might be able to even get this on chess pieces too. Maybe if you want a little boost to your additive damage, I guess wherever you can roll it. I wouldn't roll it on an amulet, but maybe on a chess piece. You kind of want quad damage reduction stats on there. Might not be worth it. Physical damage clearly doesn't work. Damage to frozen works. Damage when swapping weapons does not work. Ranged or dual wielded damage does not work. Damage after dodge. It is calculated as damage percentage and thus multiplied by 2 and put in additive multiplier for poison imbuement dot damage. It snapshots. Interesting. Could be nasty in PvP with a specific affix, but I'm not going to get into that. Damage versus healthy. Additive damage and the big multiplier for poison imbuement dot. Snapshots. Snapshot has been observed in other tests. Damage versus healthy. I'm going to assume this is the rare node and the Paragon board, just because I know he said it wasn't working correctly with exploit. Or maybe I lied because exploit didn't snapshot when you would think it would snapshot, but it didn't snapshot. Where were we? But damage versus healthy snapshots, which is weird, but exploit doesn't. Damage versus elites, additive damage. In the big multiplier. Oh, so damage versus elites is additive. It's not even multiplicative. That sucks. Vulnerable. Observed. Poison imbuement snapshots the vulnerable status on the target. Distant close damage. If poison imbuement is applied in close range, it uses close damage. If applied far away, then it uses distant damage. General interactions. Weapon for poison imbuement, damage over time. Observe the weapon you use to apply poison imbuement, damage over time. Range for marksman. Is the weapon used for basic calculation, even if other weapon type is higher DPS? So what does that mean? That means you can use your melee, your daggers. So when you're attacking with your daggers and applying poison imbuement with your daggers, it uses your daggers for the damage calculation, and vice versa. If you're shooting an enemy with your bow, and you apply poison imbuement with your bow, it's going to use your bow in the damage calculation. Here we go. Creeping Death. Works, but not as expected. One of the few interactions that dynamically updates poison imbuement damage, tick damage, gets increased when it is up, and down to no increase when it's not up. Works as expected based on Sanctum's observation. Based on Sanctum's I don't know who Sanctum is, and I can't say observation. Gives you the first value as a damage increase per CC. Each CC gives an additive increase to the multiplier. So this is huge. This actually makes Creeping Death much worse than I had thought it would be. I thought for a second it was going to be better than the Barber. No one was really talking about it, but according to this, the additional CC effects are only additive and not multiplicative, and that's huge. That's a huge damage difference for sure. Poison Trap does not count as a crowd control unless you talent knockdown. So unless you use the skill node that gives it knockdown, does not count as CC. Must knock down. Poison Trap does not count as crowd control unless you knock down. Only increases effectiveness of Creeping Death during the knockdown. Poison Trap 2. Poison Trap damage increases when enemies stand in the trap on the ground and doesn't increase when outside of it. Not tested DR outside of trap visual, so I didn't test damage reduction. But if the enemy is standing over the trap, you're going to get the effects of dealing damage affected by trap. Enemy is not standing on the trap. No effects. No increased damage. Makes sense. Just typical observation. Twisting Blades. Works, but not as expected. The increased damage done when you have Impale on the target does work for Poison Imbuement. But even the first initial imbued Impale gets the 8% multiplicative damage buff. Unexpected interaction. The reason you see small dot ticks occasionally at the start is because the server has an internal tick rate every 30 frames. This means that each time you start combat, the game checks where it is on the tick rate and reduces the first tick. And each tick after will be 30 frames every 0.5 seconds after that. Interesting. Dark Dance does not work. Trap damage calculation, unexpected interaction. Traps use your actively wielded weapon in the damage calculation. If you are ranged with bad melee weapons, make sure you use range skill first before using your trap. Also something to learn. That's pretty interesting. But thanks for sticking around. Thanks for listening to me. Thanks for just listening to me in general rant and talk about this sweet spreadsheet. I am going to link this in the description. I'm sure Pictor is going to love everyone who is reading this and finding his information. If you see him on the Reddits, make sure you give him props. Make sure you say, I say hi. It's fucking awesome. This is really good. It's really, really good information for poison imbuement, especially because when it comes to Diablo 4 and the mechanics and the foundation and all these damage bucket, well, all the affixes in the damage bucket and itemization, so fucking convoluted. Like everything is just so convoluted for no reason. So seriously, Pictor, thank you so much for this spreadsheet and your information. Big shout out to you always. And to everyone watching, thanks for stopping by. Take it easy. Peace.